At almost 65 years old, Vince Coleman should be remembered as one of baseball's greatest speedsters, but instead, he's known for destroying one of the most promising careers in sports history. This is the story of a man who achieved something no other player in the 20th century could accomplish, yet threw it all away through a pattern of reckless behavior that turned him from a record-breaking superstar into baseball's most hated player. Coleman's tale isn't just about wasted talent. It's about how a historic athlete became the poster child for self-destruction in professional sports. Vincent Maurice Coleman burst onto the baseball scene in 1985 with the kind of rookie season that legends are made of. Playing for the St. Louis Cardinals, he stole 110 bases in his first year, setting a record for rookies that still stands today. This wasn't just impressive, it was historic. His performance earned him the unanimous National League Rookie of the Year award, and fans across America were witnessing the birth of a new kind of baseball star. But Coleman wasn't done making history. He followed up his rookie season with 107 stolen bases in 1986 and 109 in 1987, becoming the only player in the entire 20th century to achieve 3 consecutive seasons with over 100 stolen bases. The Cardinals built their offense around Coleman's legs. His ability to get on base and immediately become a threat changed how opposing teams played defense. Pitchers couldn't focus solely on the batter when Coleman was dancing off first base, ready to steal second at any moment. His aggressive base running style became a key catalyst for 2 Cardinals pennants, and St. Louis fans couldn't get enough of their lightning-fast leadoff man. During his 6 seasons with the Cardinals, Coleman compiled an incredible 549 stolen bases, placing him second only to the legendary Lou Brock in franchise history. If you're enjoying this deep dive into one of baseball's most controversial careers, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest sports stories that go beyond the headlines. But even during his peak years in St. Louis, warning signs of Coleman's troubling personality were emerging. In 1985, when a reporter asked him about baseball pioneer Jackie Robinson, Coleman's response shocked the baseball world. He said, "I don't know nothing about him. Why are you asking me about Jackie Robinson?" The backlash was immediate and brutal. Rachel Robinson, Jackie's widow, responded by saying she hoped Coleman would learn and be embarrassed by his own ignorance. This wasn't just a mistake or poor judgment. The public saw it as profound disrespect and arrogance from a young player who should have known better. This single comment established a narrative that would follow Coleman for the rest of his career. The same year brought another bizarre incident that would become a recurring theme in Coleman's story. During the 1985 National League Championship Series against the Los Angeles Dodgers, Coleman was stretching during a rain delay before Game 4 when disaster struck. A large automated tarp at Busch Stadium rolled over his leg, causing a chipped knee bone and severe bruising. The injury sidelined him for the remainder of the postseason, and many blamed the Cardinals' eventual World Series loss to the Kansas City Royals on his absence. Following the 1990 season, Coleman became a free agent and signed a massive 4-year contract worth $11.95 million with the New York Mets. The organization was trying to replace power hitter Darryl Strawberry, who had left for Los Angeles, with Coleman's speed-based game. From the very beginning, this expensive experiment was doomed to fail. Coleman's time in New York was plagued by hamstring injuries that limited his playing time and destroyed his signature stolen base production. He played in just 72 games in 1991 and 71 games in 1992, with his stolen base totals plummeting to a pathetic 37 and 24 respectively. The decline in his performance fueled harsh criticism from fans and media. Critics called him an AstroTurf player whose success depended on artificial surfaces, claiming his only asset was negated by the grass field at Shea Stadium. This criticism highlighted a fundamental strategic failure by the Mets front office, who had invested massive money in a player whose skills were optimized for a surface that didn't exist at their home ballpark. Coleman's own complaints that the field was keeping him out of the Hall of Fame only made the situation worse and contributed to the negative media coverage. Beyond his on-field struggles, Coleman developed a reputation as a clubhouse nightmare. Fans described him as a jerk, a clubhouse cancer, and a miserable excuse for a human being. His conflicts with management were frequent and public. An argument with coach Mike Cubbage at the end of the 1991 season contributed to manager Bud Harrelson's firing. A more serious altercation with Harrelson's replacement, Jeff Torborg, in September 1992 resulted in Coleman being suspended for the rest of the season. The dysfunction reached new levels in April 1993 when Coleman recklessly swung a golf club in the clubhouse and injured teammate Dwight Gooden. While Gooden wasn't seriously hurt and was able to pitch the next day, the incident perfectly captured Coleman's careless attitude and complete lack of awareness about how his actions affected others. The controversies extended beyond the clubhouse walls. In 1991, Coleman and teammates Dwight Gooden and Darrell Boston were named in a sexual assault complaint by a woman in Florida. While prosecutors ultimately didn't pursue charges due to insufficient evidence, the allegation became another permanent stain on Coleman's public image. For public figures, serious accusations can destroy reputations even without legal convictions, and this incident became another piece of evidence in the narrative of Coleman as a troubled individual. All of these issues were building toward one final, catastrophic moment that would end Coleman's time in New York forever. On July 24, 1993, after a game at Dodger Stadium, Coleman made the decision that would destroy whatever remained of his reputation. While sitting in a car with teammates Bobby Bonilla and Eric Davis, Coleman threw a powerful firecracker from the vehicle into a crowd of fans who were waiting for autographs. The explosive device was identified by authorities as an M100 or M80, which has the power of a quarter stick of dynamite. The explosion injured 3 innocent people. A 2-year-old girl named Amanda Santos suffered second-degree burns to her cheek and damage to her eye and finger. An 11-year-old boy sustained cuts on his shin. A 33-year-old woman reported hearing problems and vertigo. Coleman initially called his actions inappropriate, but had the audacity to complain about being portrayed as insensitive and uncaring, showing zero genuine remorse for the pain he had caused to children and adults alike. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office charged Coleman with a felony for unlawful possession of an explosive device. They chose this serious charge because of the strength of the explosive and the severity of the injuries to his victims. While facing a maximum sentence of 3 years in prison, Coleman eventually accepted a plea deal that reduced the charge to a misdemeanor. He was sentenced to a $1,000 fine, 200 hours of community service, and was ordered to pay restitution to the people he had hurt. The Mets' response was immediate and final. On August 26, 1993, co-owner Fred Wilpon issued a public statement that Coleman would be placed on paid administrative leave for the rest of the season and, most importantly, that he would never play for the Mets again regardless of the legal outcome. Wilpon stated that the team had the right to release him, trade him, or fight him on his contract, and that it was in the organization's best interest that he never wear a Mets uniform again. This public declaration was unprecedented for Wilpon and sent a clear message that the organization was done tolerating Coleman's behavior. The firecracker incident wasn't just another controversy in Coleman's troubled career. It was the final straw that forced the Mets to take decisive action. Unlike previous clubhouse conflicts or unproven allegations, this was a clear act of public endangerment with real, verifiable victims. It transcended internal team issues and became a public relations crisis that threatened the organization's reputation. Coleman became the scapegoat for an entire era of Mets dysfunction, and his fate with the team was sealed. Following his banishment from New York, Coleman's career became a nomadic journey through baseball's lesser franchises. On January 5, 1994, he was traded to the Kansas City Royals along with cash in exchange for Kevin McReynolds. His performance with the Royals provided a brief respite from his declining career as he managed to record 76 stolen bases in 179 games. However, this was merely delaying the inevitable downward spiral. Coleman was traded to the Seattle Mariners in mid-1995, played briefly for the Cincinnati Reds in 1996, before being released, and concluded his career with a limited and unsuccessful stint with the Detroit Tigers in 1997. His post-Cardinals statistics reflected a dramatic drop in production, with his overall on-base percentage, slugging ability, and stolen base efficiency all declining significantly from his glory years in St. Louis. Despite everything that went wrong, Coleman's athletic achievements cannot be ignored. He retired from baseball with 752 career stolen bases, ranking him 6th in Major League history. He holds numerous historical distinctions, including being the only player to achieve 3 consecutive 100 stolen base seasons. In 2017, he was inducted into the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame, recognizing his athletic brilliance during those peak years with the Cardinals. Don't forget to like this video if you found this story as incredible as we did, and subscribe for more deep dives into the careers that could have been legendary, but ended in controversy instead. However, Coleman's legacy remains a powerful example of how talent alone isn't enough to secure a place among baseball's greats. Despite being a statistical marvel whose name appears in the record books, he's rarely celebrated alongside other baseball legends. His series of public missteps created an indelible image that completely overshadowed his historic achievements. The disconnect between his on-field brilliance and off-field reputation represents one of the starkest examples in sports history of wasted potential. While Coleman has a legitimate claim to being a historical figure in base stealing, his career is remembered more for the chaos he created than for the records he set. He became a symbol of professional dysfunction, and his name serves as a reminder of how quickly extraordinary talent can be destroyed by poor decisions and reckless behavior. At almost 65, Vince Coleman's story stands as a cautionary tale about the importance of character, showing that athletic greatness means nothing if you can't control your worst impulses. Keith Hernandez is over 70 now, and his story remains one of baseball's most compelling tales of talent, struggle, and redemption. Most fans remember him as the mustached broadcaster calling Mets games, but his path to that booth was anything but simple. This is the story of a man who revolutionized first base, won championships, faced personal demons, and ultimately found a way to transform his life completely. Born in San Francisco in 1953, Keith grew up in a household where baseball wasn't just a game, it was everything. His father, John, had been a baseball prospect whose own dreams were cut short by circumstance. That unfulfilled ambition got channeled directly into Keith and his brother Gary. John created an intense training program that started in their garage, where Keith would swing at a sock filled with a tennis ball hanging from a rope for hours. He filmed Keith's at-bats with a home movie camera and made him study the footage. He even gave 8-year-old Keith written tests about game situations. This demanding upbringing created something special in Keith, but it came with emotional costs. His brother Gary noticed that Keith seemed to perform better under pressure, not worse. That ability to thrive when things got tough would define his entire career. But the intense training also created a complicated relationship with his father that Keith described as a love-hate thing. While he relied on his dad's knowledge to fix his swing during slumps, he also felt a constant need to prove his independence. The psychological conditioning from this childhood would prove crucial throughout Keith's career. There were times when his father's criticisms left him in tears, but it also built extraordinary resilience. Keith learned to excel amid chaos, a skill that would be tested repeatedly during his professional life. Keith's professional journey started quietly. The Cardinals drafted him in the 42nd round in 1971. He was the 783rd player selected, hardly a can't-miss prospect. His minor league numbers were ordinary. He hit around 250 for most of those years, but something clicked when he reached the Cardinals' AAA team in Tulsa. His average jumped to 351, and suddenly the major leagues were calling. The breakthrough came in 1979, a season that announced Keith as one of baseball's elite players. He led the National League in batting average at 344, runs scored with 116, and doubles with 48. That season earned him a share of the Most Valuable Player award with Willie Stargell, the first and only time two players have ever tied for the honor. But Keith's real revolution was happening at first base, where he was completely redefining what the position could be. Before him, first base was essentially where teams parked their big power hitters who couldn't field anywhere else. Keith changed all that with innovations that seem obvious now but were revolutionary then. His defensive skills turned first base into what experts called a defensive weapon. He could charge bunts with the speed of an infielder, often catching runners off guard. He had an incredibly strong throwing arm that allowed the Mets to redesign their infield positioning. Keith developed a pickoff move that was so effective, it kept base runners honest and changed how teams approached stealing second base. From 1978 to 1988, he won 11 straight Gold Glove awards, still a record for National League first basemen. Keith didn't just play first base, he reimagined what the position could be and influenced an entire generation of future first basemen. His offensive numbers during his Cardinals years were consistently excellent. He batted over 307 times and finished with a career batting average of 296. His on-base percentage of 384 demonstrated his value as a complete hitter who understood getting on base. While Keith was establishing himself as one of the game's best players, his personal life was becoming complicated. Like many players in the early 1980s, he began using cocaine during a period when drug use was widespread throughout baseball. For Keith, what started as recreational use during a difficult period following his separation from his wife gradually became more problematic. The culture of baseball in the early 1980s was very different from today. There was less awareness about addiction and fewer support systems for players struggling with substance abuse. Before we dive deeper into how Keith overcame these challenges, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think was the most impressive part of Keith's defensive game. Was it those 11 consecutive Gold Gloves, or the way he completely changed how first base was played? Keith's troubles came to a head through his deteriorating relationship with Cardinals manager Whitey Herzog. Herzog was old school. His two rules for players were simple: be on time and hustle. He felt Keith was coasting on his talent, doing crossword puzzles in the clubhouse, and not giving maximum effort. But the real issue was Herzog's growing awareness of Keith's off-field problems. The breaking point came in 1983. On June 15th, the Cardinals traded Keith to the New York Mets for two pitchers, Neil Allen and Rick Ownbay. Cardinals fans booed when the trade was announced at Busch Stadium. Herzog later admitted he viewed Keith as a cancer on the team because of his drug use. The trade was meant to bury Keith on a last-place team that had lost 94 games or more every season from 1977 to 1982. Instead, something amazing happened. The change of scenery was exactly what Keith needed. Despite being initially unsettled by the move, he hit .306 for the Mets over the rest of 1983 and won his sixth straight Gold Glove. More importantly, leaving St. Louis removed him from the environment that had enabled his drug use. The Mets were building something special with young players like Darryl Strawberry, Dwight Gooden, and Ron Darling. They needed veteran leadership, and Keith became that leader almost immediately. Keith was named the Mets' first ever on-field captain. His veteran presence and high standards transformed a team of talented individuals into a championship unit. The culmination came in 1986 when the Mets won 100 games and defeated the Boston Red Sox in a thrilling 7-game World Series. Keith hit .310 during the regular season and provided the steady leadership the team needed during their most intense moments. But Keith's past caught up with him during the 1985 Pittsburgh drug trials. As part of a federal investigation into drug trafficking in baseball, Keith was granted immunity to testify about what he knew. Under oath, he admitted to using cocaine for 3 years starting in 1980. He said he had developed an insatiable desire for more and had even played games while under the influence. Keith also made a statement that created headlines across the country. He estimated that maybe 40% of major league players were using cocaine in the early 1980s. He later said he might have been grossly wrong about that number, but the damage was done. Baseball was facing a crisis, and Keith had become one of the most prominent faces associated with it. Commissioner Peter Ueberroth suspended 11 players in February 1986, including Keith. But Keith's suspension was conditional. He could continue playing if he agreed to drug testing for the rest of his career and contributed 10% of his salary to anti-drug programs. Keith accepted those terms and never failed a drug test again. He had truly left his drug use behind. The scandal probably cost Keith a spot in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Despite his incredible achievements, the MVP award, 2 World Series championships, those 11 Gold Gloves, he never received more than 10.8% of the vote from baseball writers. He fell off the ballot in 2004. Modern statistics show Keith's career was actually Hall of Fame worthy, with a career WAR of 60.3 that compares favorably to several inducted players. But the drug scandal overshadowed his on-field greatness. Keith finished his playing career with the Cleveland Indians in 1990, but retirement opened up a completely new chapter. In 1998, he joined the Mets broadcast team as a color commentator. Since 2006, he's been part of a beloved trio with Ron Darling and Gary Cohen on SNY. Keith's broadcasting style is unique and instantly recognizable. He's known for his wry humor, honest analysis, and willingness to criticize players when they make mistakes. Mets fans love his curmudgeonly personality and deep knowledge of the game. He's won 2 Emmy Awards for his work and has become as much a part of Mets culture as any active player. Beyond baseball, Keith became a cultural icon through his guest appearance on the popular television series Seinfeld in the 1990s. His famous mustache was even recognized by the American Mustache Institute as the top sports mustache ever. He's used his platform for important causes, particularly supporting the Alzheimer's Association in honor of his mother, who suffered from the disease. Keith's story found its proper ending when the Mets retired his number 17 in 2022, placing it alongside other franchise legends at Citi Field. He was also inducted into the Cardinals Hall of Fame in 2021, showing that both organizations eventually recognized his contributions despite the controversies. Looking back, Keith Hernandez represents something important about second chances and personal growth. He made serious mistakes during his playing career, mistakes that had real consequences for his reputation and Hall of Fame chances. But he owned those mistakes, accepted responsibility, and built a new life that has brought joy to millions of fans for over 25 years. Keith's defensive innovations changed baseball forever, influencing how first base is played even today. His leadership helped bring a championship to New York. His broadcasting work has educated and entertained fans for decades, proving that athletes can successfully transition to new careers with the right attitude and work ethic. His story shows that while our mistakes have consequences, they don't have to define our entire lives. Keith Hernandez proved that with honesty, hard work, and a genuine commitment to change, it's possible to build something meaningful from even the most difficult circumstances. What do you think about Keith's complete journey from his complicated childhood through his playing career to his success as a broadcaster? Let me know in the comments what part of his story resonates most with you, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about baseball's most fascinating figures and their paths through life.
Many called Greg Maddux the nastiest player in baseball history, but not for the reasons you might think. While some saw his off-field antics as career-damaging chaos, the truth reveals something far more incredible about one of baseball's greatest minds. Greg Maddux was born in San Angelo, Texas in 1966 and drafted by the Chicago Cubs in 1984. What followed was a 23-season career that would redefine what it meant to be a dominant pitcher. He won more games than any other pitcher in the 1990s, finishing 8th on the all-time career wins list with 355 victories. He holds the record for most Gold Gloves by any player with 18 and became the only pitcher in history to win at least 15 games for 17 straight seasons. But here's what made Maddux truly special. His fastball wasn't overpowering at all. It started at 93 miles per hour early in his career and dropped to less than 86 by the end. Instead of relying on pure speed, Maddux developed something much more deadly. His teammates called him the Professor because of his cerebral approach to pitching. Maddux turned every at-bat into psychological warfare. He would study opposing hitters for hours, memorizing their habits and weaknesses. His philosophy was simple but revolutionary. He wanted to make hitters swing at 0-2 counts, which went against everything coaches taught. Most warned against throwing good pitches on 0-2, but Maddux knew this count had the lowest batting average in baseball. He was willing to give up hits because he understood that fewer pitches per at-bat would wear down entire teams over 9 innings. His approach to pitch location was like a chess master planning 5 moves ahead. He knew that a pitch up and in would force hitters to start their swing earlier, while something low and away gave them more time to react. Against Barry Bonds, one of the greatest hitters ever, Maddux had a 3-pitch sequence that was pure art. He'd start with a changeup up and in, follow with another changeup down and away, then finish with a fastball high and inside. The different speeds and locations made his 94-mile-per-hour fastball feel like it came from a much harder thrower. What do you think was more important to Maddux's success, his mental approach or his physical mechanics? Drop a comment below and hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started on this incredible story. Beyond his mental game, Maddux was a machine when it came to pitching mechanics. Experts called him a cyborg of pitching efficiency during his peak years. Professional analysis of his delivery gave him perfect scores of 80 for both balance and repetition. This meant he could repeat his exact motion with remarkable consistency no matter what pitch he threw or what the count was. His posture scored a 70, and his torque was well above average at 65, which came from perfectly timed trunk rotation that created maximum hip-shoulder separation. This mechanical perfection translated into incredible durability. While other pitchers were breaking down chasing higher velocities, Maddux's sound mechanics protected his arm. He pitched at least 194 innings for 21 straight seasons. His only trip to the disabled list was for nerve inflammation in his back, not an arm injury. The stability of his delivery became the foundation for his command-based style and kept him healthy when his peers were falling apart. Modern analytics have proven just how special Maddux really was. A study using advanced data found that his command was 4 standard deviations better than the average pitcher. To put that in perspective, that's like having a .362 batting average or throwing 105 miles per hour. The study looked at how often pitchers hit their intended spots and how often they missed badly. In 19 games, Maddux hit his target 34.5% of the time, while his major miss rate was only 23.2%. Even when compared to the 19 best starts by any pitcher in their database, Maddux still ranked in the 95th percentile for command. Some people claim Maddux benefited from larger strike zones in his era, but the data accounts for pitch type, count, and batter-handedness. His pinpoint accuracy wasn't luck or generous umpires. It was genuine elite skill that's nearly unmatched in baseball history. His reputation among fellow players tells the real story. Dante Bichette once shared how Maddux struck him out with a curveball after getting him out twice with a different pitch. Most pitchers would stick with what worked, but Maddux intentionally changed his approach to mess with hitters' expectations. The most famous example of his brilliance came against Tony Gwynn, one of the best contact hitters ever. Gwynn batted .429 against Maddux over his career and never struck out in 103 plate appearances. This seems like a failure, but it actually shows Maddux's genius. His strategy was to induce weak contact from hitters. Against someone like Gwynn, who was equally brilliant at making contact, this approach led to hits instead of outs. Maddux himself admitted that while every hitter is helpless if a pitcher can change speeds, there was one exception, that Tony Gwynn. But Maddux had another side that earned him a very different nickname. In the clubhouse, teammates called him Mad Dog because of his outrageous pranks. David Wells described him as a silent scumbag with a silent sickness you had to watch out for. Chipper Jones, a Hall of Famer himself, called Maddux one of the grossest guys I've ever been around in my life. His pranks weren't random acts of immaturity. They were calculated psychological warfare, just like his pitching. Andre Dawson tells a story about Maddux in a clubhouse jacuzzi with several teammates. Maddux asked if they had ever seen 4 black guys run from one white guy. When they said no, he proceeded to urinate in the jacuzzi while yelling, "Run, brothers, run," as they scrambled to get out. One of the most infamous pranks involved Chipper Jones and what became known as the bacon strip. After playing golf, Maddux wiped himself with a sock from the team's sanitary sock bin and threw it back in for someone else to find. Jones discovered a dark smudge on his shin after putting on the sock, creating a story that still gets told decades later. Perhaps the perfect example of how his two personalities connected was his fart chart. During games, Maddux would meticulously record every audible fart in the dugout on his pitching chart. He'd write down initials and keep tally marks, applying the same obsessive data collection he used for opposing hitters to something completely ridiculous. He even referenced this in his Hall of Fame speech, thanking his brother for teaching him a little bit about science, referring to lighting flatulence. Even later in his career, the pranks continued to evolve. He once disguised himself with a thick beard and posed as a sound man during a workout with Chris Bryant. After giving Bryant some attitude, Maddux took over as the batting practice pitcher and threw nasty pitches until Bryant finally recognized him. These weren't just jokes for entertainment. Maddux's pranks served as psychological dominance that mirrored his on-field strategy. Just like he studied hitters to find their weaknesses, he observed teammates and exploited their vulnerabilities for maximum effect. His mind craved intellectual challenges, whether he was facing Hall of Fame hitters or pranking Hall of Fame teammates. The outrageous behavior also served as a release valve for the intense mental pressure of his pitching style. The psychological demands of precision-based pitching are enormous. By engaging in chaotic and often disgusting behavior off the field, he could decompress and maintain levity, preventing burnout and keeping his mind fresh for competition. Understanding Greg Maddux means accepting that the Professor and Mad Dog weren't contradictions but reflections of the same brilliant personality. He was hyper-intelligent, detail-oriented, and intensely competitive in everything he did. On the mound, he epitomized control with surgical precision and efficient delivery. Off the field, he reveled in chaos and unpredictability. Both approaches involve studying people and exploiting their vulnerabilities. What made this duality so powerful was how it protected his mental health during a grueling career. The intense focus required for his pitching style could have burned out most athletes, but by having an outlet for chaos and humor, he maintained balance. His teammates might have suffered through gross pranks, but they also got to play alongside someone who stayed mentally fresh for over 2 decades. The Mad Dog persona wasn't a distraction from greatness. It was essential maintenance for a high-performance mind. The fart chart perfectly demonstrates this connection. It showed the same obsessive, data-collecting mind applied to a childish gag. His pranks were psychological assertion within the clubhouse, maintaining social dominance that complemented his on-field competitiveness. Greg Maddux's legacy is a complex masterpiece woven from unparalleled brilliance and bizarre behavior. As the Professor, he redefined pitching by proving intellect could triumph over velocity. His preparation, mechanics, and understanding of hitting created a Hall of Fame career with 4 straight Cy Young Awards and a World Series championship. The same mind that outsmarted the greatest hitters in the world was the one that would urinate in hot tubs and return dirty socks to teammate bins. These weren't contradictory personalities, but 2 sides of the same competitive genius. The discipline required for his pitching excellence was balanced by chaotic release off the field. What makes this story so incredible is how both sides actually helped his career rather than hurt it. The pranks weren't distractions from greatness, but part of what made greatness possible. Subscribe for more incredible baseball stories and let us know in the comments which side of Maddux you find more fascinating. To truly appreciate Greg Maddux, you must embrace his full character: the genius, competitor, prankster, and professor. His story proves that greatness isn't always conventional and that dominant minds express themselves in the most unexpected ways. Rather than destroying his career, both personas combined to create one of baseball's most complete and unforgettable legends.
When you think of the greatest baseball players of all time, one name inevitably comes up alongside legends like Babe Ruth and Willie Mays. But unlike those revered figures, this player's legacy remains deeply divided. Barry Bonds holds more offensive records than perhaps any player in history, yet he's been excluded from the Hall of Fame. How did one of the most talented athletes ever to play the game become so controversial that his achievements are overshadowed by his reputation? Barry Bonds wasn't just good at baseball, like he was historically great. He holds the all-time record for home runs with 762, more than any player who ever lived, showing that pitchers feared him so much they often refused to pitch to him. He's the only player ever to join both the 500 home run and 500 stolen base clubs, proving he wasn't just a power hitter but also incredibly fast. Add to that 7 MVP awards and 8 Gold Glove awards, and you have what many consider the greatest hitter who ever played the game. But Bonds' story isn't just about numbers. From the very beginning, beginning of his career, he developed a reputation that would follow him throughout his life. Even in college at Arizona State, where he was clearly the best player on the team, his coach described him as difficult to work with. His teammates became so frustrated with his behavior that they actually voted to kick him off the team, despite knowing he was their most talented player. This pattern continued into his professional career. When he played for the Pittsburgh Pirates early in his career, he won 2 MVP awards and helped bring fans back to a struggling team. Yet reporters and fans never warmed to him. Even his own front office was willing to trade him away, and only his manager's strong opposition stopped the deal. If you're enjoying learning about this fascinating story, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think about Bonds' early reputation issues. Was it fair for his college teammates to want him off the team? Bonds later explained his approach in interviews, admitting he wasn't the best teammate. He said he refused to share his hitting secrets with other players because he viewed baseball as a business. In his mind, a teammate could be traded to a rival team at any time, so why help someone who might later compete against him? While this logic might make business sense, it created exactly the isolation he would later complain about. When Bonds joined the San Francisco Giants, his most famous conflict erupted with teammate Jeff Kent. Both players had difficult personalities, but their feud became legendary. Kent was known as someone who took baseball traditions very seriously, while Bonds was seen as someone who ignored team norms. It spilled into public view during a dugout fight in 2002 that was caught on camera. Interestingly, the fight started when Bonds defended another teammate who Kent was criticizing. Yet the media didn't portray Bonds as a hero standing up for someone. Instead, they framed it as a clash between 2 difficult personalities. This shows how Bonds' reputation colored even his positive actions. When someone has a certain image, people interpret everything through that lens. The feud included bizarre incidents like arguments over bus seating arrangements and Kent's motorcycle accidents that violated his contract. Despite all this drama, both players performed incredibly well on the field, helping the Giants reach the World Series in 2002. Bonds' isolation from his teammates was even visible in the clubhouse. He set up his locker space with 4 lockers, an oversized recliner, a television, and his own staff. This created a physical barrier between him and the rest of the team, reinforcing his image as someone who saw himself as separate and above others. His relationship with the media was equally confrontational. Bonds openly showed disdain for reporters, accusing them of lying about him and comparing their coverage to old television reruns. He tried to deflect attention from his controversies by pointing to more serious issues like natural disasters, but his tone often came across as arrogant rather than genuinely concerned about social problems. This confrontational approach backfired. Instead of defending himself effectively, his hostility toward the press became part of the story itself. His visible contempt for media scrutiny shaped the narrative more than any defense he could have offered. Then came the steroid scandal that would define the final chapter of his career. The Balco investigation led to Bonds being indicted on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice in 2007. While he was later cleared on appeal in 2015, the legal battle moved public opinion from mere dislike to moral judgment. The scandal provided concrete justification for feelings many people already had about Bonds. His perceived arrogance suddenly had a specific reason attached to it. The dramatic physical changes he underwent in the later years of his career, his much larger body size, which was visible to everyone watching, could now be attributed to alleged steroid use. This created what the analysis calls a perfect feedback loop. His difficult personality made him an easy target for scrutiny, and the steroid allegations seemed to confirm people's worst suspicions about his character. The scandal didn't create the negative feelings, but it gave people a concrete reason to justify opinions they had already formed. However, it's important to note that Bonds' treatment wasn't necessarily consistent with how other players were handled. When Mark McGwire's steroid use was revealed, many people defended him by saying steroids weren't banned in baseball at the time. George Steinbrenner, the Yankees owner, was a convicted felon but faced little media outrage. Hall of Fame pitcher Gaylord Perry openly admitted to cheating by doctoring baseballs but was almost praised for his cleverness. Some observers argue this difference in treatment suggests racial bias may have influenced how Bonds was judged compared to white players who had similar or even worse transgressions. Bonds' personal life also became public in damaging ways. His divorce involved allegations of domestic abuse, though police found no physical evidence to support the claims. His ex-girlfriend's testimony in the Balco case painted a picture of someone who became increasingly aggressive during the period when he allegedly used steroids, though the defense argued she was motivated by revenge after their relationship ended. The Hall of Fame question brings all these issues together. The voting rules include a character clause that tells voters to consider integrity and sportsmanship alongside on-field performance. Bonds fell short of the required 75% of votes, maxing out at 66% in his final year of eligibility. The voters split into different groups with different philosophies. Some refuse to vote for any player connected to steroids. Others draw distinctions between players with definitive evidence versus those with only rumors. A smaller group argues that Bonds' pre-steroid career alone was worthy of the Hall of Fame. But a deeper look suggests that Bonds' personality and media relationships played a crucial role in his exclusion. Writers who vote for the Hall of Fame are the same people he had hostile relationships with throughout his career. His difficult reputation made him an easy target for voters who wanted to make a statement about character in baseball. What makes this complex is that Bonds wasn't entirely one-dimensional. Some former players have defended him publicly. He's been involved in charitable work, including supporting children's hospitals and running baseball camps for young players. These positive aspects of his character received much less attention than his controversies. So what should we make of Barry Bonds' legacy? His case represents a unique combination of extraordinary talent, personal conflicts, legal troubles, and public relations disasters. Unlike players who faced single scandals, Bonds' controversies reinforced each other across his entire career. His exclusion from the Hall of Fame isn't simply about steroids or simply about personality. It's about how these factors combined with media coverage and public perception to create a narrative that overshadowed even his historic achievements. The debate over Bonds reflects broader questions about how we judge public figures. Should performance be the only measure that matters? How much should personal character influence how we remember athletic greatness? Is it possible to separate the person from their accomplishments? Bonds supporters point to his incredible statistics and argue that many steroid users from his era are already in the Hall of Fame, making him a scapegoat. They also note the achievements of his pre-steroid years, which alone might warrant Hall of Fame consideration. His critics see him as someone whose talent couldn't overcome fundamental character flaws, a player who alienated teammates, fought with media, and allegedly cheated to enhance his performance. What's your take on this complex legacy? Should the Hall of Fame be about pure performance, or does character matter too? Leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into sports history's most fascinating figures. Perhaps the most honest assessment is that Barry Bonds represents the complexity of human nature itself. He was simultaneously one of baseball's greatest talents and one of its most difficult personalities. His story serves as a reminder that greatness in one area doesn't guarantee greatness in all areas, and that how we handle success and adversity shapes how we're remembered just as much as our achievements do. Bonds' legacy will likely remain unresolved, which might be fitting for someone whose career defied simple categorization. He holds records that may never be broken, yet he's excluded from his sport's most prestigious honor. He was capable of acts of generosity and mentorship, yet he alienated many of those closest to him. He achieved statistical greatness that speaks for itself, yet his reputation suggests that numbers alone don't tell the complete story of who someone is or how they should be remembered. The impact of Bonds' exclusion from the Hall of Fame extends beyond his personal legacy to broader questions about baseball's relationship with its own history. The steroid era, roughly spanning the 1990s and early 2000s, saw offensive numbers reach historic heights. Many players from this period have been inducted into the Hall of Fame, despite operating in the same environment where performance-enhancing drugs were widely available and poorly regulated. This selective enforcement of moral standards raises uncomfortable questions about consistency and fairness. If the Hall of Fame is meant to represent the best players from each era, excluding the most dominant hitter of the steroid era, while including others seems contradictory. Yet, if character matters equally to performance, then voters must grapple with where to draw lines and how to weigh different types of misconduct. Bonds' story also reflects the changing nature of sports media and fan expectations. Earlier generations of players often had their personal flaws overlooked or downplayed by a more deferential press corps. Babe Ruth's drinking and womanizing were well known but rarely emphasized in coverage. By Bonds' era, sports journalism had become more aggressive and investigative, with 24-hour news cycles demanding constant content. The racial dynamics of Bonds' treatment can't be ignored when examining his legacy. Baseball has a complicated history with race, and some observers argue that black players have faced higher standards for character and behavior than their white counterparts. Whether conscious or unconscious, these biases may have influenced how Bonds was covered and ultimately judged. Looking at Bonds' impact on the game itself, his dominance forced strategic changes that remain visible today. Teams began employing extreme defensive shifts against pull hitters, a practice that became commonplace throughout baseball. His ability to work counts and draw walks influenced how hitting coaches teach plate discipline. His training methods, controversial as they may have been, contributed to the modern emphasis on year-round conditioning and nutrition. From a purely baseball perspective, Bonds' later career years represent some of the most remarkable offensive performances ever recorded. His 2001-2004 peak, when he won 4 consecutive MVP awards, defied statistical logic. His 2004 season, when he was intentionally walked 120 times, showed just how much opposing teams feared putting the ball anywhere near the strike zone when he was batting. In the end, Barry Bonds' career serves as one of sports history's most compelling case studies in the relationship between talent and character, achievement and legacy, and the complex ways that public perception shapes how we remember our heroes and villains.